subscribe to the channel, and hear even more exciting stories. My in-laws kicked me out while pregnant, but here's the secret I was hiding. Hey Reddit, this is probably going to be a long one, so buckle up. Throwaway because, well, my in-laws are nosy, and honestly I'd rather eat glass than have them stumble across this post. I, 29F, am currently 7 months pregnant, married to Eric, 31M, and, until a week ago, living with his parents in what I once naively thought was a temporary arrangement. You know those family sitcoms where everyone bickers but hugs it out by the end of the episode? Yeah, our setup was nothing like that. If I had a nickel for every awkward dinner or passive-aggressive comment from my MIL, let's call her Patricia, I could probably buy my own house and escape this circus. To be fair, when Eric and I first moved in, I really wanted to like them. Patricia played the doting host, offering me herbal teas for the baby and smiling with all her teeth, while my FIL, Ron, mostly grunted from behind his newspaper. It was manageable at first, but the longer we stayed, the more the cracks started to show. Patricia had a comment about everything: my prenatal vitamins, my laundry habits, even how much water I drank. Too much can bloat you, dear. Thanks, Patricia. So does your cooking. Eric insisted they meant well. They just want to help. It's only for a few months, babe. Famous last words. I brushed off the weird tension, told myself it was hormones or culture clash, or maybe just me being sensitive. After all, family is complicated, right? Looking back now, there were red flags I ignored. Patricia's tight smiles, the locked bedroom doors, the whispers that stopped when I entered the room. But I never expected them to escalate from judgmental to outright hostile. Certainly not to the point where I'd find myself, belly and all, literally pushed out of the house. You'd think there would be a dramatic showdown, a screaming match, maybe a broken plate or two. Instead, the way I learned my in-laws wanted me out was almost laughably passive-aggressive. It started with small things. My shampoo moving from the shower to the guest bathroom, the family group chat suddenly silent when I posted an ultrasound pic, Patricia, accidentally, locking me out when I went for a walk. But the real moment came on a rainy Thursday, of course. I came home from my doctor's appointment, alone, because Eric was busy and his parents said traffic was too much for them. My key didn't work. I jiggled it, thinking pregnancy brain was getting the best of me, but nope, new lock. Patricia opened the door with her perfect, chilly smile, handed me an envelope, and told me I'd probably feel more comfortable somewhere with less stress. She actually said that, as if I'd booked a luxury retreat and not been evicted from my own supposed home. Inside the envelope was a prepaid hotel card for a week, some loose cash, and a note that said, "We hope you find the peace you need to be the best mom you can." I wish I was exaggerating, but Patricia even signed it with a smiley face. I stood there, rain soaking my shoes, barely able to process what was happening. Ron never looked up from his TV show. I called Eric, barely holding it together. He sounded shocked, maybe genuinely, maybe just caught off guard. He stammered something about figuring it out and told me to go to the hotel, that he'd talk to them and fix this. I hung up and just stood in the lobby, hands shaking, trying not to cry in front of a family of 4 who were checking in for what looked like a fun vacation. My world had just tilted sideways. I was pregnant, alone, and had no idea what the hell had gone wrong. Shock is a weird thing. You'd think, after being booted from your own home while 7 months pregnant, you'd have some kind of movie-worthy meltdown, crying in the rain, cursing the sky, maybe even a dramatic monologue. Instead, I felt like I was floating outside my body, watching myself try to hold it together in a generic hotel lobby with ugly carpet and fake plants. When the reality sank in, it hit hard. I sat on the stiff bedspread, surrounded by silent air conditioning and the faint smell of bleach, and just stared at the ceiling. Why? What could I possibly have done to deserve this? Did I say something? Did I not say something? Was it the laundry, the vitamins, the fact that I refused to name the baby Patricia Jr.? Anger didn't hit right away. First was humiliation. Imagine having to text your best friend. Guess who's homeless now? Spoiler, it's me. Then came the fear, the heavy kind that settles into your bones when you realize you're pregnant, basically alone, and technically without a roof over your head. I tried to rationalize it, of course. Maybe Patricia and Ron were just overwhelmed. Maybe Eric would swoop in, knock some sense into them, And this would all be one of those stories we laughed about in therapy years from now. I kept checking my phone, waiting for Eric to call back with a miracle. Spoiler, no miracle. That night, I cried quietly into the hotel pillow, willing myself not to fall apart completely. I pressed my hands to my belly, whispered to my baby that everything would be okay, even though I wasn't sure I believed it. For the first time, I realized that, whatever happened, I needed to stop waiting for someone else to fix things. I was scared, hurt, and furious. But beneath all that, a new stubbornness started to grow. My in-laws might have kicked me out, but I was not going to let them write the end of my story. The next morning, I woke up feeling less like a kicked puppy and more like a private investigator on a bad daytime soap. I needed answers. Why did my in-laws want me out now? After all these months of tight smiles and helpful advice, was it just control, or was there something more? First, I tried getting answers from Eric. I called, and he finally picked up after what felt like 100 rings. He sounded tired, defeated, and honestly a little scared. When I pressed him, he just kept saying, "It's complicated," or "Let me handle it." Not helpful, babe. Not helpful at all. So I turned to my group chat. The ride-or-die friends who'd been with me through every awkward baby shower and hormone-fueled rant. They went full Sherlock Holmes. One remembered that Patricia had been extra jumpy lately, even asking if anyone knew good lawyers for family situations. Another mentioned seeing Ron at the bank a lot more than usual, looking stressed. None of it added up, but it made me realize there was more going on than my laundry habits. Determined, I started piecing together the little things I'd noticed. Patricia's obsession with family appearances, the whispers that stopped when I entered the room, the way she'd flinched when I mentioned updating my will for the baby. Was this about money? Control? Or maybe, just maybe, jealousy? The biggest clue came when I called Eric's cousin, Jen, under the pretense of needing baby advice. She hesitated, then blurted out, "They think you're after the family inheritance." I almost dropped my phone. Apparently, Patricia had been spreading rumors that I was a gold digger who planned to take everything and run. Honestly, if I wasn't so angry, I might have laughed. I was living off hotel mini-fridges and vending machine snacks, hardly plotting a family heist. But now, at least, I knew. This was about fear, control, and some very twisted family politics. Fueled by equal parts fury and adrenaline, with maybe a dash of hormonal courage. I decided enough was enough. If Patricia wanted drama, I could deliver, preferably with less pearl-clutching and more truth. I called Eric and told him I was coming over to talk. No more cryptic texts or excuses. He sounded nervous, but agreed. Walking up to the house, I felt oddly calm. Maybe it was the baby kicking, maybe just the exhaustion of being treated like a villain in someone else's soap opera. Patricia opened the door, that familiar smile stretched tight as ever. Ron lurked in the background, eyes glued to his phone. I didn't waste time. "Why did you kick me out?" I asked, my voice steady. "And please, let's skip the for your own good routine." Patricia actually gasped, clutching her pearls, literally, I kid you not. She started in on a speech about family values and trust, painting herself as the martyr trying to protect her son. I cut her off. "You mean you think I'm here for the inheritance? Because Jen told me everything." "I'm not after your money. I just wanted a safe place for our baby." That caught her off guard. She sputtered, then went on about not knowing my intentions, how she couldn't risk the family's legacy. It was absurd, almost laughable, but also deeply sad. Ron finally looked up, mumbled something about not wanting drama, and left the room. I looked at Eric, waiting for him to take my side, or any side at all. He just stared at the floor, shoulders slumped. "I'm sorry," he whispered. I didn't know what to do. That was the moment I realized. I'd been fighting so hard to be part of this family, but they'd never really accepted me. It hurt, but it also set me free. I stood tall, told Patricia and Ron I'd find my own place, and that the baby and I would be just fine without their support. If they ever wanted to be part of our lives, it would be on my terms. And then, for the first time since all this started, I felt strong. Leaving that house, I expected to feel relief. And I did, for about 5 minutes, until the reality of what just happened came crashing down. I wandered the block for a while, texting my friend a shaky play-by-play. The combination of anger, sadness, and exhaustion hit all at once, and suddenly I was just a pregnant woman with nowhere to go and a suitcase full of resentment. Eric tried to call me that night. He left voicemails, all apologies, and I wish things were different. He promised he'd talk to his parents, that he'd figure it out, that maybe we could all start over. I didn't even know what starting over would look like. I felt betrayed, not just by his parents, but by him, too. His silence in that living room said more than 1,000 excuses ever could. My own family was horrified. My mom wanted to come get me immediately. She lives 4 hours away. She kept repeating, "This isn't your fault, sweetheart." And for the first time, I let myself believe her. My friends rallied, too. One set up a spare room, another brought ice cream, and suddenly I had a small army behind me. It helped, but didn't erase the ache. Pregnancy hormones plus abandonment is a special kind of hell. Every kick from my baby reminded me what really mattered. There were nights I sobbed into the pillow, wondering if I'd messed everything up, if my child would ever have a family that felt like home. There were days I was so angry I couldn't breathe. Sometimes I missed the illusion of belonging more than the actual people. But the more distance I put between myself and that house, the lighter I felt. I realized I'd survived something awful, and I was still here, still standing, still fighting for my baby and myself. Maybe, just maybe, I was stronger than I'd ever given myself credit for. Once the initial storm passed, I realized it was time to get practical. I started by finding a more permanent place to stay. A friend's guest room with a window that let in real sunlight, not the cold, filtered kind from hotel blinds. I met with a lawyer just to be sure my rights, and my babies, were protected. The lawyer was kind, and honestly, just having someone in my corner made me feel a little less lost. I blocked Patricia's number. That felt oddly satisfying, like closing a door that should have been locked a long time ago. I told Eric I needed space to figure things out. If he wanted to be involved, he had to show up for me and our child, not just talk about it. For once, I didn't ask for permission or approval. I simply stated what I needed. I started documenting everything. The eviction, the weird notes, even the hotel receipts. My friends joked I was preparing for my revenge arc. Honestly, it felt less like revenge and more like reclaiming my narrative. For the first time in months, I felt a flicker of real confidence. I enrolled in a prenatal yoga class, reached out to support groups, and let people help me, even when it was awkward. As my due date crept closer, I reconnected with my mom, letting her visit and fuss over me in all the ways I'd missed. We bought baby clothes together and built a little nest of hope in my new space. It wasn't what I'd pictured, but it was mine, and that mattered. Through all of this, the secret I'd been carrying grew heavier. I had resources Patricia and Ron knew nothing about. I wasn't actually alone or broke. In fact, thanks to a trust fund from my late grandmother, my side, not theirs, my baby and I would be more than okay. But I kept that card close to my chest, knowing it was almost time to play it. Because sometimes, the best revenge is living well and letting the people who underestimated you watch. The day I finally revealed my secret didn't feel as dramatic as I'd imagined. There was no reality TV camera, no slow-motion walk into the sunset. Just a simple email, a legal notice, and a bank transfer. But for the first time since Patricia and Ron pushed me out, I was in control. It started when Eric reached out, asking if I needed money or help with the baby. I took a breath and decided it was time for the truth. I explained, gently but clearly, that I had my own resources. A trust fund my grandmother had left me, and only me, would cover a home for myself and our child, plus enough to ensure we'd never need to rely on his parents' generosity again. He was stunned. There was a long silence on the call. Then, almost sheepishly, he admitted his parents had convinced him I was using the family. They'd built this narrative around me as the poor, desperate outsider. He sounded embarrassed, maybe even a little ashamed. I told him I didn't owe his parents any explanation, and neither did our child. Word got back to Patricia, probably through the family grapevine, or maybe because Eric couldn't keep it to himself. Cue the barrage of texts, sudden invitations to talk, suggestions that we could start over, and even an apology email that was so performative I had to laugh. For people so obsessed with money, the idea that I was independently secure seemed to shake them to their core. But I didn't want revenge. I just wanted freedom. The power dynamic flipped overnight. Suddenly, Patricia and Ron weren't holding anything over me. I made it clear, politely but firmly, that my baby and I would be building our own family, with or without their involvement. In a weird way, my secret wasn't just about money. It was about self-worth, about realizing I didn't need anyone's approval to stand on my own. And when I felt my baby kick that night, I knew we'd both be just fine. After everything came out, the chaos faded into a strange new quiet. Patricia and Ron kept trying. Awkward invitations, guilt-tripping messages, even a couple of unexpected gifts left on my doorstep. A baby blanket and a book about family unity, which I donated to Goodwill with a smile. But their power over me was gone, and that changed everything. Eric tried harder, at least. He started coming to doctor's appointments, bringing groceries, asking real questions about the baby. I could see him struggling with guilt, but also finally seeing his parents for who they really were. We had a lot of long, hard conversations. I told him I needed trust, not just apologies, if he wanted to be in our child's life. He agreed to therapy. For the first time, it felt like we might actually build something honest, even if it was slower and shakier than I'd hoped. My own family stepped up in ways I never expected. My mom became my anchor, coming for the birth and helping me set up my own little home. My friends threw me the world's coziest baby shower. And when I brought my daughter home from the hospital, she was surrounded by love, not the fake, judgmental kind, but the real, messy, here for you at 3 a.m. kind. The best part? I learned to trust myself again. For so long, I'd second-guessed every decision, worried about pleasing people who were determined not to be pleased. Now, with my baby asleep on my chest and a new sense of freedom in my heart, I realized I didn't owe anyone a picture-perfect family. I just owed my child honesty, safety, and love. As for Patricia and Ron, they faded into the background. The door wasn't locked, but it stayed firmly in my control. Boundaries, I learned, can be a kind of love, too. The kind you give yourself when no one else will. Looking back, it's wild to think that being kicked out at one of the most vulnerable points in my life ended up being the best thing that could have happened to me. I wouldn't wish that pain or fear on anyone, but I can honestly say it forced me to grow in ways I never imagined. It taught me that sometimes family is chosen, not inherited, and that standing up for yourself doesn't make you difficult or ungrateful. It makes you a survivor. Here's what I'd tell anyone else in the same storm. First, trust your gut. If something feels off, it probably is. Don't ignore red flags just because you want to keep the peace. You and your child, or anyone you love, deserve better than to be at the mercy of someone else's insecurity or control. Second, don't let shame or pride keep you from asking for help. My real support system wasn't the people who shared my last name, but the ones who showed up, friends, my mom, even a few kind strangers online. Let people help you, even if it feels uncomfortable at first. Third, keep your power close. You don't have to reveal all your cards to people who treat you like the enemy. Protect your peace and your plans until you know who really has your back. Finally, don't define yourself by the way others treat you. Patricia and Ron's opinion didn't change who I was as a mother, partner, or person. I found joy in the little things. Baby giggles, late-night snuggles, quiet mornings in my own space. My daughter will grow up knowing she is loved and safe, and so will I. If you're going through something similar, please know you're stronger than you think. Sometimes the hardest endings are really the start of a life that finally belongs to you. Thanks for listening, Reddit. And if Patricia ever finds this post, no hard feelings. But I'm keeping the hotel slippers.